Welcome to the AZ Political Podcast. I'm Jim Sharpe, and our headlines this week. Headline number one, this week, the X account known as Libs of TikTok claimed that Arizona Democratic State Senator Annalise Ortiz was impeding and doxing ICE agents by posting where they were conducting immigration raids. State Senate President Warren Peterson, a Republican, then announced he was asking the U.S. Attorney for Arizona to investigate whether Ortiz had violated federal law. And Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs weighed in, saying she had concerns about Ortiz's posts because of situations, quote, where I've seen officers conducting a raid and being targeted, and we want to make sure that's not a situation that's being created here. Headline number two. Speaking of ICE, Senator Mark Kelly became the latest Arizona Democrat to inspect the detention center maintained by ICE in Eloy. Arizona Congresswoman Yasmin Ansari visited there in May when she called its conditions sickening. And earlier this week, Congressman Greg Stanton toured the facility and met with a woman by the name of Kelly Yu, who owns a restaurant in Peoria. Yu, who also met with Senator Kelly, illegally came to the U.S. 21 years ago to flee China's one-child policy. Or formerly one-child policy. And headline number three, this week marks exactly 1 year before Arizona holds its primary election for its state offices, including governor. And it marks 1 year from Arizona's congressional primary, deciding who will participate in the super important midterm elections of 2026. And that brings me to my guest on the AZ Political Podcast, a man who is foregoing the latter in order to pursue the former. Congressman Andy Biggs announced a few months ago that he will walk away from Congress while firmly planting his flag in the governor's race. Welcome, Congressman.
Jim, thanks. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you. So my first question to you is this. Do you remember the first time I interviewed you on camera?
I'm not sure it was the first time, but yeah, I remember an interesting time.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, I worked at a Republican political firm, and my boss at the time had an idea that we should create a character, a fake newscaster. We didn't create it. We actually stole it. We just called him Jim Burgundy. And then State Rep Andy Biggs was kind enough to join me at the Gold Canyon Republican Club, where I interviewed him as Jim Burgundy. Here's a little bit of that interview for you to enjoy, Congressman.
I'd like to turn to national politics for a moment.
Excellent. Bless your heart.
Do you blush when you hear the term stimulus package?
Only when you say it.
Yeah. So I'm sorry for that in the past. I'm going to make this a serious interview. You played along so well, and you didn't buy into doing anything naughty or dirty. I just threw those things out there, and I have to apologize for that. Because my boss now would never go for that kind of stuff, we're going to get to the serious questions.
I just have to say, Jim, that the trauma I felt all those years ago. I'm almost over. Yeah, I'm almost over.
Almost over it. Okay. So as we get serious, I'd like you to take a moment to compare yourself to two women. First, how you'll govern differently from Democratic incumbent Governor Katie Hobbs, and how you believe you would govern differently from Republican candidate Karen Taylor Robeson if she were to get the win.
Well, with regard to both of them, I think, first of all, Katie's got experience, but I also have experience having served in the State House and the State Senate.
Yep.
Was a Senate president, worked with two Republican administrations as the Senate president. I know how it works. That's really different than probably even the current governors. I know how it works. And I also have this great luxury of knowing how the federal system works, having served there for in my fifth term in 9 years now.
Wow, has it been that long?
It's been, it went by fast. And I feel like I've seen darn near everything at the federal level now. I mean, multiple impeachments and, mass hysteria over the COVID thing, all kinds of things that would normally go on. But I also have relationships with the federal cabinet officials, the president, the vice president, that I can reach out. I think that makes me different than both of the others. And then my vision and how to implement it, that can really come a lot easier for us, because as I go out and I'm talking, and I think I've been endorsed by more than 24 current or former state legislators, because they all get excited because they know what
One of
happened.
their own?
Yeah. That I know how to collaborate with the legislature, and we're going to get stuff done, and it'll happen fast too, Jim.
And so, well, Katie Hobbs did serve in the state legislature, but Karen Taylor Robeson didn't. What do you think of people who say, hey, it's time for an outsider to come in?
Well, it may be time for an outsider, but a lot of people would say that I'm currently an outsider with the way things are working in the state. And so I step back in, and I will just tell you, if you really want to get stuff done, I don't need somebody to come in on day one and say, we need to hire someone to tutor me on how to do this. I know how to do it. And Jim, I'm going to get elected in November of 2026, and the next day, after the new speaker, the new Senate president are there, we'll continue on putting together the agenda. And by the way, those 200 and some odd vetoes that Governor Hobbs has done, we're going to be going through those bills and pulling out some pretty impressive bills and put together an agenda that we can move in January of 2027.
There is always the possibility, and it's become less remote of a possibility, that you could end up with a majority in one of the houses in the state legislature that's Democrat.
Yeah, I don't see us breaking that way, and I'll tell you why. If you look at the last election, Trump won, I think, by 160,000 plus votes, and we took every statewide office. We expanded the state legislature. I think the trend is moving the Republican way, Jim.
Okay. Former Republican Governor Doug Ducey ended up in President Trump's not-so-good graces when he certified Arizona's 2020 election. If you're elected governor of Arizona, will you be willing to go up against Donald Trump when you disagree with him? And where during your time in Congress have you opposed President Trump's policies and ideas?
Yeah, so President Trump and I have a terrific relationship. It's a very open and honest relationship. And when I've disagreed with President Trump, I've called him on the phone and said, look, here may be an issue. We've sat down in his office, in the Oval Office or in the cabinet room with some others, and we've talked about times that I've struggled. So let me give you an example. This happened very early on, but I think it kind of typifies our relationship. I won't give you the whole story unless you want the whole story.
Sure.
But you remember the ACA, the Obamacare.
Yeah.
And in 2016, every Republican ran on repealing Obamacare, if you remember.
Right.
Including me. Mm-hmm. And so when we got there, and Paul Ryan decided he wasn't going to repeal Obamacare, he was going to kind of trim around the edges, I told him, and I told basically everybody, I said, I can't vote for that because I promised my voters that I would vote for a repeal. We're going to do a repeal. And so as that happened, and the first bill came out in the Freedom Caucus, and I was a member of the Freedom Caucus, and we all said, we can't vote for that bill. And President Trump got really upset and used his Twitter account to express himself, and made it pretty clear that he wanted something done. Eventually, he came around and said, you know what, you guys, that bill doesn't repeal Obamacare. And so they redid another bill, which I didn't believe it didn't repeal Obamacare. Everybody knew it didn't repeal Obamacare. And so this is what happened next. The night before I was supposed to fly back to D.C., I'm at home, and I get a call from the speaker, then Speaker Ryan, and he says, you're the guy, you're going to take down this bill. I said, Paul, we've got a 35-seat majority. I can't vote for this, and I'm not the guy. He says, you're the guy. I said, I'm not the guy. I'm the guy. Anyway, we had this little tag going on, and finally we both crack up laughing. And I said, Paul, this is going to pass without me, but I can't vote for it because it doesn't do what people are saying it's going to do. And we had a nice conversation, and I think it's done at that point. Well, I fly into D.C. the next day. My chief of staff picks me up, and she says, hey, the vice president, we got to get to the Capitol fast. Vice president's there, and he wants to meet with you. And I said, what about? Of course, we knew what it was about.
Right. And
I meet with him, and we had this conversation, and I'd actually read the bill. I'd talked to experts about it, and he's telling me why he thinks we should do it. And I said, look, he says, why wouldn't you do it? And I give him a list of things specifically to the bill. And I said, but besides, I think it's immoral. And he said, I want to talk about the immoral part. And I said, first of all, we all promised we'd repeal Obamacare. We didn't do it. This doesn't do it. And so it's not keeping the promise with the American people. The second thing is there's some pretty good people up here in Washington, D.C. who know that this doesn't repeal it, but they're lying to the American public, telling them this repeals Obamacare. I said, so that's no good. That's no bueno, and I can't do it. He said, he said at that point, he said, I'm not going to ask you to change your vote. And I said, great. Then the next day's the vote. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, President Trump's woodshedding people. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I don't want to get woodshedded, And so I said, I'm going to go down and watch the debate on the floor. And I go down to the floor to watch the debate. And someone taps me on the shoulder. I'm thinking nobody knows where I am. I didn't tell my staff. I'm just kind of sitting there at the back of the room watching the debate. Tap, tap, tap. The president would like to speak with you on the phone. Can you speak with the president now? And I said, well, I'm a little busy watching this debate, but I went and talked to the president, and he said, and just the nub of our conversation, he said, Mike says you're a pretty principled guy, that you're going to vote no on this bill. He says, I'm not going to ask you to change your vote. If you could help me, that'd be great. But that's kind of started our relationship where if I have a problem with something, and in fact, we talked about it over the big, beautiful bill, there were some things in there that needed to be fixed.
I did hear you had some gripes about it. What were your gripes, and do you feel like it actually does put us in a position to start paying off this insane debt?
Well, you get to the heart of my issue was this actually you perpetuate the deficit and debt, but at this and it got packaged, but we had so many good things in it in the House bill. Ultimately, that we got in there, we took dealing with the Green New Deal stuff, dealing with you had to do the tax, you had to continue the tax extenders and all of that. So I felt pretty good about that. But when it came back from the Senate, Lisa Murkowski had been able to actually get a lot of her stuff in there. Right. Alaska was basically exempted from everything. And so
are they really part of the U.S. anyway? I mean, really,
we need their oil. Yes, Jim, they are. So we're there, and it's we just fought, but So I went in and I said, look, this is we're going to have to do this because if it went back to the Senate, Lisa Murkowski was saying publicly, I'm going to get even more, and she was right, and she would. In the end, so I said, talking to the president, talking to the vice president and others, like I said, I will vote for that bill. But here's what happens, because you asked the question: will it actually attack the structural deficit and national debt?
Yeah.
What's happening is. There's going to be more money coming in from tariffs. There already is more money coming in from tariffs, and that will help slow down the growth of the deficit, okay? But until we get serious, and by the way, the other thing, we actually cut a deal with the president, and the president agreed with us because he's like, he wants to get rid of the Green New Deal too. And what he's doing is out of deference to our private conversations, I'll just say that he's done everything he said he would do, and much of the Green New Deal is now hampered. Things like subsidies for solar and wind, and making it more difficult to bring in Chinese manufactured goods for those two types of projects. Yeah, he's kept it up. I think that type of stuff will actually help us potentially turn the corner at some time. But Jim, it's not what a deficit hawk like myself would normally like to see.
Yeah. And I mean, how much nose holding have you had to do during your time in Washington? Do you feel good about it, or are you like, well, there's some battles I couldn't win, some battles I couldn't even fight, and just had to vote no on some stuff, and other things it's like I have to vote yes for this because it's on the balance, it's more good than bad.
Yeah, I mean, everything. It's been very difficult. Let's just put it this way, because when Trump left, he kind of couched exactly what the case is. He said, "I didn't know the swamp was as deep as it is," And it really is, and it's you're fighting an uphill battle constantly. When Matt Salmon asked me, he was my predecessor in Congress. When he asked me to run to take his spot, he said, "Andy, every morning the Obama administration kicks me in the teeth. In the afternoon, my own team stabs me in the back." And he says, "I sleep on an air mattress at night in my office." He said, "Will you take my place?" And I said,
"What was the appeal there?"
Yeah, I said, "Man, that sounds like a deal."
So let's talk about your background and what made you decide to serve in public office. I mean, what gave you your first spark to run for the state legislature, and what has maintained that fire in the belly to stay in office in different offices?
Well, I grew up in a kind of politically active home on the grassroots level. My wife did too. I thought it was so ugly. I told her when we got engaged to get married, I said, "We can never get involved in politics. It's too ugly." And I still believe that it's really ugly. But what happened is I started going to the Republican district meeting, and it was actually kind of fun. I guess I'm warped. I mean, so you go, "Wow, this is kind of cool." And I was going with Thayer Vashore, who I think you remember from the state legislature. Mm-hmm. And we would go, and people would ask me to run because if you show up, Jim, if you show up, then people ask you to do something.
Right.
And so people started asking me. And
that's why I only showed up in disguise with a mustache. That was a fake mustache, by the way. Yeah. But anyway, sorry.
That's all right. So I would tell people no, and then finally there was a redistricting. Our state rep was being districted out. She called me up specifically and said, "I think you should do this." And she said, "You're prepared." And so I said, "Okay, I'll run." Mm-hmm. We prayed about it, my wife and I, and we ran. And much to our surprise, I won a seat. And once you get in there, you want to continue to fight as long as you have the fire in the belly to fight and make change. And if that's your reason for running on again, then I think that's important, and that is for us. And every time we've had an opportunity to serve, much of it hasn't come because I've sought it. It's because people have come to me. I mean, whether it was running as the majority leader in the state senate, or then the president of the state senate, and even running for Matt's place, he approached me and asked me to run. And then now running for governor, a lot of people put a lot of pressure, but we said no. But we finally came to the conclusion that there may be something I have to offer, and it is my experience level, and it is my knowledge, and it is my relationships, and it is I have a broad knowledge that I think makes it rather unique, and for someone to run and then to have the experience and know how it works. But I want to see this state be transformed into one that provides flourishing for every Arizonan should be able to fulfill their goals and their desires to fulfill the creation effectively that God made for him. And so, like yesterday, we're at the Grand Canyon. You look across and you see the fire that's going up there, and you go, well, what could we do to prevent? This is like one of the top 10 fires in Arizona history. Yeah. How can we prevent fire throughout this state? We went to by Williams and saw how the state is working with the counties and federal partners to actually create thinning that's going to slow that down. And how can we get that through the state? In other words, there are solutions to some of our problems that are not being addressed. And this governor is not going to do that, I don't believe. And I think I'm in a unique position to be able to do it. That's why I'm running.
By the way, the Apaches have also done an amazing job.
Yes, they have.
There for us. And
yes.
Yeah, you should definitely talk to them.
Yeah.
So you brought it up. Is it the family business? Because your daughter, Miley, is running for office now. She's hoping to win a state Senate seat and represent the same area of the valley that you did in the state legislature. I don't want to get too personal here because I wouldn't want anybody to get too personal about my daughters, right? But are you partially horrified of the idea because of what I just said? I wouldn't want anybody to get too personal about my daughters and say anything mean about them.
Look, yeah. So Miley, she knows no other life, I'm afraid to say.
So it's your fault.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But I mean, this was in of interest to her. So if you think about it, she decided to study to get her degree in government politics. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Are you sure?" And she said, "Yeah, I like it. I really like it." And I said, "Oh, okay." But she's worked on not just my campaigns, but other people's campaigns. She's worked in policy shops around town. She's one of her assignments was to actually track the legislature for a good period of time. So she knows how that works. She's watched how I've worked, and I think she's prepared. She's gonna run. I think she's gonna win, and I think she's her own person, of course. I mean, and
right.
she's got her ideas on what needs to happen, and
So there was no stopping her if you wanted to. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm saying is like she asked me what I thought, and I said it's up to you. It's your decision to make. And I said I did say I want you to remember I have to have protection details, okay?
Right.
You need to know
that,
and you need to be aware that there's going to be people saying stuff about you that is untrue. They're just flat out lies, and it'll be for nefarious reasons. It won't be because they want to help you. It'll be because they want to harm you. And so she says, "Yeah, eyes wide open. I know. I've been around it." So
yeah, and will there have to be will there have to be a little bit of restraint within yourself when somebody says something about her as she's running for office that, like, hey, Dad wants to come to the rescue, and you can't really use your fist to settle those kind of arguments, right?
Right. I mean, look, I'm a dad first, right? I mean, so you're right. But what I've found is, as I've seen people already say things that are untrue and unfair, I say, I need a catharsis. I will say what I think, and I'll be like Abraham Lincoln said, and he said, write out a letter, and then don't mail it.
Right.
Okay, so that's kind of how that works.
Restraint of tongue and pen.
Exactly.
Thing.
Yeah. Is there such a thing anymore, Jim?
No. It was restraint of thumb and pen now. Everybody's on their phone tweeting stuff. So
yeah.
How goes the fundraising? Because you can't win without it. I know it's most politicians' least favorite part of the job. And you trail both Ms. Taylor Robeson and Ms. Hobbs when it comes to Money in the Bank.
Yeah, I mean, and that's going to be we fully expected that coming into it. I mean, the Democrats view this as their number one save state because I think Governor Hobbs is in a little bit of political hot water. So they're going to come in with a lot of money to bail her out, no matter what. And she's got $4 or $5 million in the bank.
Got a chunk.
And then my Republican primary opponent has basically unlimited. It appears to be unlimited resources from the family side, and that's fine. We understand that as well. But we had a pretty doggone good quarter. This last quarter.
Yeah, fair enough.
For somebody like, and I really loathe fundraising. I mean, I like the people. Right. I like them so much I hate to say, hey,
can you give me some
what's
money?
In your wallet,
Right.
Yeah, so
you feel like a pickpocket.
Exactly. So but we did pretty well. I was surprised that we did well. I think we're going to have a big this current quarter is going to be pretty good. And July and August are always tough months, but we're going to still come out okay. And then I think by the end of the year, we're going to be sitting pretty well. And the other thing I would say to people is never forget, I can give examples of this. It isn't how much money you have. You don't have to have as much money as your opponent, but you do have to have enough money to get your message out. Mm-hmm. And if you can get your message out, and if your message is the winning message and it resonates, people will vote for you, and you can get them out. And the other thing is to know that we've got a massive grassroots team on our side that's going to help us turn out the vote for us.
What is the number one thing you want to sign, either being, an order from the executive office of the state of Arizona or the first piece of legislation you want to sign as governor if you get the win in 2026? What's the first thing you want to do in 2027?
Well, so this is getting back to what I was talking about earlier. There's some bills that have to be signed like right away, and we're going to and I hope to. I know how to do this, so we're going to have bills pre-filed. They're going to be mirror bills. We're not going to have a big elaborate party on opening day. What we're going to do is we're going to get sworn in at 8:30 in the morning. By 9:30, we're out of there. Hopefully by 10 a.m., the committees on both sides of the house of the mall over there are meeting and considering the bills that have been pre-filed and assigned to their respective committees. And we're getting the first and second and third reads out. And so that first week, we should be looking at things like the election integrity bill that was first on our desk this year that Governor Hobbs vetoed. We should be looking at the CCP, you can't own land in Arizona bill.
The Chinese Communist Party. Yeah.
Exactly. We should be looking at the 20-plus rural water bills that she vetoed. To see and start pushing those forward because water's an issue. We should be looking at how are we going to reform taxes in this state. We should have a tax bill on there. What I'm telling you, Jim, is you can have your whole agenda be rolling out there in that first week or two, so that by Friday, Saturday, I'll be signing bills, and it will be one thing we've learned from watching Trump is you can do these things with purpose, clarity, and alacrity, and if you do that, you're going to get a lot of stuff done very quickly, and that's my intention.
What would you like to see in an election integrity bill? Because I think that might be a place that a couple of Republicans disagree with you on. The results of the 2020 and maybe even some of the 2022 election. Where would you like to see things change?
Well, things need to move in the direction that the legislature got every Republican vote for this time. And that is you're mirroring Florida's election law. So you find out the day of who won the elections. I think it's hard for me to understand why Democrats wouldn't want that, but everybody should want to know sooner rather than later. Arizona is now the laughingstock of the country on election.
But is that fair that we're the laughingstock because we make double sure?
Is that why you think? Is that what you think, Jim?
Well, I'm just throwing it out there. It's my job to ask these questions, right? Is it? A lot of people would argue that we just take our time because we want to make absolutely sure that every signature matches up and that every vote counts, as opposed to we just got to get to that finish line right away.
Well, I'll just tell you this as a guy who's watched some of the election counting in person. I'm not sure that you can make it with a straight face the argument, we're just double checking everything. We're like Santa checking his list twice to make sure who's naughty and nice. That's not what's happening. I want to remind you what Florida was in the Bush v. Gore.
Yeah.
Florida was the laughingstock of the country.
Hanging chads.
And now Florida is the gold standard on election integrity. So you tell me, do you want – and by the way, this is important too. You have Hillary Clinton that was saying for years that the elections were rigged, right, against her. The people on both sides of the aisle that don't trust elections is in the majority. It seems to me that as an American who believes in this constitutional republic, and the most fundamental right and the most fundamental obligation is to vote, if the people don't trust your elections, then maybe you need to take a good long look at that and fix that. And so the bill that the legislature put up there, unanimously passed by every Republican in both the House and Senate, kind of mirrored Florida's. In other words, we said, who seems to have it right? Florida does, and so
except for the humidity thing. Yeah.
Well, I didn't say on the gators, the mosquitoes, the humidity, or the hurricanes or anything else. On election,
okay, all right,
on election. That's
fair,
why we do that.
Yeah. Anything that I did not ask about that you would like to make sure people know about Andy Biggs as he runs for governor of the state of Arizona?
Well, first of all, I'm an Arizona native, born and raised here, and I've already been all over the state many times since I announced. I'll be all over the state some more. This is a great state. It's the most beautiful state. I believe it can be the most prosperous state, freest state in the country. I believe, and I did tell this to Byron Donalds, who's running to become the new governor of Florida after DeSantis is termed, is that, hey, you're going to see red lights in front of your eyes about 90 days after we both win the election. He said, what is that? And I said, that's the taillights of Arizona becoming the freest, most prosperous, quite frankly, most Republican state in the country. And that's what's going to happen.
All right. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jim.
Biggs, pleasure. And I think really a much more, robust interview this time around.
Oh,
Jim Burgundy.
I will just say this. That may have been crazy with Jim Burgundy, but that was robust.
Well, that is true. Fair enough. I mean, how could it not be with that mustache?
Yeah.
Right?
Good stuff, Jim.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate your time. And thank you for watching the AZ Political Podcast. I'm Jim Sharpe, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for watching the AZ Political Podcast with Jim Sharpe. Click the box to watch more from KTAR News and tap the button in the middle to subscribe.